and welcome to our latest episode of Tech Talk Podcast by Perifery. I'm joined by Pete Watlin, our Senior Sales Director for EMEA. Hello, Pete.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And you?
Good, thanks. Lovely sunny day. Good.
It is very nice. It's not raining for once, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be nicer to be outside, but I'm thrilled to be recording this podcast with you. So
Well, I'm pleased.
Next best thing and all.
So anyway, this podcast, we're going to really be delving into the world of cloud storage.
Favorite
Talking
subject.
about you love this topic. Talking about all the pitfalls of vendor lock-in and hefty egress fees and getting your take on it. So yeah, just really diving straight in then. Can you explain for our listeners then what is vendor lock-in in the context of cloud egress fees, and why is it often likened to ransomware?
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things on this. I'm not sure if you noticed recently, but some of the larger cloud providers, namely AWS, and that's not a dance around mentioning names, have decided that that it's your content, so there should be no fees to move away to the internet if you want. So we always spoke about the fact that paying for storage is pretty extreme anyway in terms of prices, but then having to pay for egress, and I'll come back to that in a minute, is a big thing. But then having to pay a significant fee to move away to the internet is just outrageous. So this has apparently been removed, and it's been removed because of whatever reasons. But now I'm sure that's not the be all and end all of it. But I think ultimately it shouldn't have been there in the first place. I mean, why you're held at ransom to move your content away? For example, and we looked into the figures, if you had 100 terabytes that was sitting in, I don't know, AWS Glacier or whatever it might be, to move that away would cost you about $10,000. $10,000.
That's insane.
Think about that. It is insane. So anyway, that's supposedly gone, but that was never the biggest problem, because the vendor lock-in side is ultimately that once you've got your content there, if it's the only copy that you have, then you are pretty much tied, because there's nothing you can do unless you're willing to pay those extreme fees. Now that's sort of those sort of figures for 100 terabytes. If you look at then people that have got more than that, petabytes, it becomes outrageous, and so outrageous that it's not justifiable. So then companies are locked in to that cloud platform because there's no way of getting out. I mean, we've been talking to companies that have petabytes, and the removal costs out of AWS would have been over $200,000, which is extreme. Anyway, so that's the sort of the moving away side, but most importantly, the challenge is egress and the hidden fees around it all. Now, I'm a big campaigner around, once again, how outrageous this is. You pay enough money to store your own content, right? For starters, so that's your own content. You're paying a lot of money to store. Why you should then have to pay to access it freely is beyond me. I mean, it's one of the things that I can't really understand, how it continues to be a factor, and how businesses continue to be happy to pay these fees. I mean, surely in the day and age that we live in, you're paying a significant fee for somebody to host your content, which is fine. You should have free access to that. Now, public clouds, they've gone down this route. The business model doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for most, so I can't see why people are still using it. But then you've got other providers, and namely sort of private cloud providers, so smaller technology companies that understand that your content is your content, and you should be able to access it when you want without any penalties. If you want to move away, it's your prerogative. That's how it should be. And those are the companies that anyone should be talking to now, and not looking at public cloud companies that give no value whatsoever, apart from what's the benefit? All you're doing is lining Jeff Bezos's pockets even more. When actually, let's look at alternatives, and there's plenty.
And those unpredictable costs then, especially for organizations who need to monetize their content, that becomes even more difficult to manage, because they don't know, I guess, if they've got, remote teams all across the world and they're all accessing the content, those costs start to mount up. But yet at the same time, they have to get obviously drive revenue from that content at the same time. So it's almost counteracting against what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's all the hidden fees that are a real shambles, and they do cause massive problems for organizations. Now, I mean, I speak to many, and some of the big companies that almost brush it under the carpet. Oh well, it's just it's a different budget. It's operational costs. Who cares? Well, I mean, somebody should, because these figures are extreme, and certainly the unpredictable sort of nature of it all. So if you have absolutely zero idea what your monthly bills are going to be, I mean, who can work with that sort of business model? I couldn't tell you one CFO that would be happy with not knowing what they're paying out each month, and then when they do get a bill, having a heart attack at the cost that they've got to pay. So, the hidden fee side of things and the unpredictability is, again, such a challenge for organizations. Certainly in the sort of times that we live in, we've had a challenging few years. Post pandemic and all of the things that have happened in the industry that make it difficult to I guess to make a profit, to turn a profit, to stay afloat. And so the last thing you want to do is be hemorrhaging money on a platform that shouldn't be charging you for these sort of things. Once again, I come back to what's the alternative, and there's plenty. So the alternative to giving huge amounts of money to massive corporates that offer no value and then charge you over and over and over again to access your data or to do things with it. The alternatives are, well, look at putting something in facility, looking at putting your own private cloud in, and there's plenty of companies that offer that, or look at using private cloud services from all of the many providers that are out there that offer huge amounts of value on top of just protecting your content. And they don't charge you these hidden fees. They don't charge you to access your own content. So I think, for me, that the time has come to stand up to the big corporates and to really make a shout about it, and hope that people realise that this isn't, that there's a better alternative, and this isn't the only way.
No, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the post-pandemic, but I guess when the world went into lockdown, a lot of organizations who were, I guess, using on-prem were sort of forced to move into more of a cloud environment so that they could continue operating as a business whilst everybody was working from home. And I guess people, there was just this rush, in terms of locking down the country. So
Yeah,
I guess that's had an impact as well. And I guess decisions have been made maybe not being fully considered because that
I
pressure.
think, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think a lot of this comes from, let's say, poor practices that have been adopted over the years, and the lack or willingness to invest in better technology, or the technology that's right for the world that we live in now. So because there hasn't been that investment, so let's say you're a company that hasn't decided to invest in better technology to improve efficiencies and to maybe sort of help you to generate revenue from your content. You haven't done that, then lockdown hits, panic, can't access systems because they're all in facility, or they're all sort of offline, or whatever it might be. And so those are the exact companies that have then decided, well, the only way forward is to make that sort of a mad sort of dash to public cloud. And having done that, there's certainly been a lot of blog posts I've been reading over the last couple of years of the repercussions of doing so, and all of the things that we've just mentioned, the lock-in, the egress fees, and the unpredictability. So all of a sudden they're in a world of spending huge amounts of operational budget that they don't necessarily have, and still they have the legacy systems that they could potentially refresh. So I think now is certainly time to look at the options around that. And but it was a challenge, and there has been a lot of fallout, let's say, from the companies that did sort of jump to cloud. And I think whilst the industry as a whole, 10 years ago, we were talking about cloud, and how would cloud adoption affect the industry, where would people go, and when. The pandemic obviously sort of rapidly sped up the decisions, and probably not in the right way, because panic buying is never a good thing, and that's ultimately what a lot of people did. So now we're in a time of reflection. So I think in a time of reflection, you've got the ability to analyze what you're doing, maybe what you have been doing over the last few years, and what options are around. And I think that everyone should question the motives around moving services to public cloud, and really look at the implications around it all, not only the cost, but all of the extras.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How do modern archive solutions then address challenges like vendor lock-in and hefty egress fees, do you think?
Well, I mean, they shouldn't have any, and I don't know any that do. Quite frankly, I mean, let's of course, I'm slightly biased on this one, but if you take a lot of you've got two ways to go. So do you want to manage your own content, or do you want someone else to do it for you? If you want someone else to do it for you, then you've got to expect to pay a little bit more. But that's for the storage fees. That's for the users. Things like that. And I get that. That's a factor. But what you shouldn't have to do is pay to access your own content. It's like putting money in a bank and having to pay to store it, but then also having to pay to use to access it all the time. And heaven forbid if you want to move to another bank, crikey. So I think the options available are certainly, cloud is absolutely an option. There's managed services that are offered by a lot of media focused companies that make sense. There's a lot of private cloud providers that offer a huge amount of value. In terms of the application layers on top, in terms of the integrations that they have, in terms of the sort of wide scale availability, and the integrations into lots of different platforms. I think cloud absolutely is a way forward. It's just questioning the right way forward. Now you could also talk about how archive content can be protected on-prem in your facility, and it's exactly the same thing. I mean, essentially, for the world we live in, where video is such a big thing, then object storage makes absolute sense. You're talking about unstructured data and needing to find it. If you can't find it, there's no point having it. So looking at on-prem, having a sort of private cloud object store in your facility is absolutely perfect for protecting that content and making it easy to find. You've got interfaces built around it, and you essentially can create your own private cloud platform that you can then generate revenue from as well. So I think gone are the days where we should look at tactically just buying storage because we've got a production, or we're getting low on we're getting low on capacity. We've got a shoot coming in, we need to do whatever. Gone are the days of doing that. We should all be thinking strategically now, over what long-term plans do we have as a business, what platforms or what technology companies will help us to not only do what we need to do now, but to protect our content in the future, that is future-proof, that can scale, that can evolve with the business needs, that does integrate with platforms that we have now or in the future. But most importantly, it's having a platform then that can not only do all those things, but that can offer ways of generating revenue. So not just thinking about buying storage and that's it for a purpose. Let's look at buying storage platforms that can then enable you to generate revenue from your assets, by offering cloud services to others. And that's for me, that's the ideal way to go. And it's certainly something that we do and we shout about on a regular basis. And as somebody said not too long ago, it's only an asset if it generates money, if it makes money. So if you can't make money from it, then it's not an asset. Something's only worth what someone's willing to pay. Absolutely.
It's got to work for you. One thing that we didn't mention about being an important factor though is security as well. I think that's a huge, when you were sort of talking about considering, private cloud or on-site facilities, being able to monetize your content, but also being able to securely store it as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always going to be question marks around cloud services and how secure really are they, and a lot of companies won't even entertain the idea because it's not locked into a facility. I mean, cloud's built on object storage generally, and there's a reason for that: security, scalability, protection, integration, all those sort of things. But being metadata driven, I think that the benefit of having your own archive platforms and facilities is that you can control all of that. So not only do you control the, let's say the sort of security compliance aspect of it all, but you can control the users, you can control what's publicly facing now, and you can manage systems yourself. I mean, having something on-prem isn't the only way of doing things. I mean, we work with companies that have decided it's a much wiser investment to purchase a technology, an appliance that they can then put in their own data centers, and they can run as their own private cloud services off-site. They can control all of that. They can control, again, who's accessing it. They can analyze and monitor the whole systems. They can write their own integrations. Basically, they can do whatever they want. But it's their own private cloud service that doesn't clog up space in their rack.
Okay, so what do you see the future of the industry then, in terms of the industry landscape? How do you see it's going to evolve with the recent announcements from the bigger vendors that you've mentioned earlier, and them not charging these egress fees anymore? Do you think that they'll just find another way of putting those costs or those charges into other parts of the service?
I'm sure they will. I mean, I feel I'd be speaking out of turn if I said absolutely they would. But let's be honest, absolutely they will look at recharging in some way. I'm sure they will. I think ultimately nobody wants companies to move away. So if you start a cloud service or you start any business, you don't want to lose customers. But I think if you do it in the right way, then you don't lose customers. When we started our cloud platform, 6 years ago, we've done it in the right way, and with the ethos that it's your content and you should have unrivaled access. And so it's all about working with the customer. If you provide a great service, then why should anybody move away? Cost-effective, value-add service. I think the prices will continue to go up. I think the challenges will continue to be very relevant, and I think all it takes is a big company that sure, they have discounts, but let's take I don't know, let's name drop. Let's take a Warner Brothers Discovery. That of course we all fully well know that they've had to shave a huge amount of cost off of the bottom line. So they've cut loads of valuable content. One of which being one of my favorite platforms and channels, GCN Plus. So if you're listening, Warner Brothers Discovery, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
We did promise a controversial podcast, didn't we?
Always controversial. So having to cut costs is all very well, but I know fully well that they are on this fully fledged movement to cloud, everything AWS. So for me, that's completely contradictory. So you're getting rid of cost of the bottom line to stick it onto a different budget, which is operational, which apparently you can sort of wash under the carpet. But that doesn't wash with me, because surely at some point somebody's going to look at the cost and think, hang on a minute, the amount of money we're hemorrhaging on a regular basis is obscene. Now, I've spoken to lots of people within the organizations, and not just Warner Brothers, we've got lots of other organizations, and they know what's going on. So why is it that the senior level don't know what's going on? Now, either it's complete ignorance or laziness or whatever it might be, but it's got to change. And I think one day, I'm hoping that somebody will wake up to this and put a stop to it all.
This is great.
We'll put a stop to it. That's my hope. But what would change in the industry? What would it look like? Who knows? I think the ever-growing need for companies to move to more sort of future-proof systems, is still there. Cost has become a large factor, because ultimately there's no point buying into systems that are going to burden the organization if there's no way of generating revenue from it. So I think what's here to stay is hybrid. So on-prem, absolutely. There's so much value in having running your own systems. That's here to stay. I think maybe it wasn't 4 years ago. U-turn, absolutely. what will be here to stay, and what will continue to grow are those private cloud companies that offer better value than public cloud. And with a slap around the face, hopefully these larger corporates will wake up and realize that technology companies are there and should be listened to over the big AWS, Amazon, Microsoft, Google corporates that that all we're doing is lining their pockets with no real need.
That's a great point to sort of come to a natural close on this podcast. No, thank you so much. It's been really good. Obviously, we are at MPTS next week in London. We do have a booth, and we will all be there, the EMEA team. So if you have listened to this podcast and you want to chat more to us about our cloud solution or on-prem solution, and our asset management platform, then do come along. Our booth is B40, so right at the main entrance. So hopefully you won't miss us. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, Pete. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It's good
Always
to chat.
a pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
do keep an eye out for more blogs coming your way as well, because Pete has put out a couple of blogs on the website and also on our social media pages. So great thought leadership content.
Thanks for listening all, and I'll see you at the show next week for any more further controversial discussions. Just drop us a line.
Thank you.
Cheers.